I was elbow deep in a quarterly report when my phone buzzed on the desk. The screen lit up with Dad, and I almost let it roll to voicemail. Almost. You don't ignore Ray Dunbar, not because he's loud or threatening, he's neither, actually, but because the man has this quiet, steady persistence that makes ignoring him feel like ignoring a slow leak in your roof. You can pretend it's not there, but eventually, the ceiling caves. I picked up. "Hey, Dad." "Hazel." His voice had that particular tone, the one he uses when he's already made a decision and is just informing you of it, the way a bank sends a letter about a change in your account terms. Not asking, notifying. "I need you to listen before you say anything." I leaned back in my chair and looked out the window. Charleston was doing what Charleston does in late October, golden light cutting sideways through the Spanish moss, the kind of afternoon that makes you forget the humidity ever existed. I had a deadline in 2 hours. I did not have time for whatever this was. "I'm listening," I said, because that was the only safe answer. "I quit your job for you." 3 seconds of silence passed, maybe 4. "You did what?" "Let me finish. I quit Dominic Reyes and that whole operation, and I accepted a new offer on your behalf. An international firm. Better pay, better title, better everything. The new boss and his team are flying into Charleston tomorrow morning to meet you formally. It's already done, Hazel. Contracts are being drawn." I stood up so fast my chair rolled back and hit the filing cabinet behind me. Tessa, sitting at the desk across the open office floor, looked up from her monitor with wide eyes. I held up one finger and walked to the hallway. "Dad." My voice was low and very controlled, the way you get when you're trying not to shatter something. "You cannot make career decisions for me. I am 31 years old. I have built every single thing I have here with my own 2 hands. Dominic gave me my first real shot when nobody else would, and you called him and quit on my behalf? Do you hear what you're saying?" "I hear exactly what I'm saying." He didn't waver, not even a little. "This opportunity came through your Uncle Clifford's connections, and it won't come around twice. The salary alone is—" "I don't care about the salary." "You would if you saw the number." "Dad, stop." I pressed my back against the hallway wall and closed my eyes. "You don't get to do this. This is my career, my life. You can't just reach in and rearrange it because you think you know better." There was a pause, and then he said the thing that made my stomach turn completely over. "Blood relatives decide as one, Hazel. That's how this family has always worked. Your grandfather made decisions for me. I make decisions for you. It comes from love. You'll understand it someday." "That is not how the world works, Dad." "It's how the Dunbar family works," he said simply. And then, "The delegation lands at 9:15. I told them you'd meet them at the Palmetto Room for breakfast at 10. Wear something sharp." He hung up. I stood in that hallway for a solid 2 minutes. Just stood there with my phone hanging at my side, staring at the industrial carpet like it owed me an explanation. Then I walked back to my desk, sat down, and looked at Tessa. Tessa Wyndham has been my best friend since our 2nd year of college. She has a gift for reading my face that borders on supernatural. She took one look at me, closed her laptop, and said, "Talk." So I told her everything. Every word of it, start to finish. When I was done, she sat back and let out a long, slow breath through her nose. "Your dad," she said carefully, "quit your job." "Yes." "The job you've had for 4 years." "Yes." "The job where you just got promoted 3 months ago." "Tessa." I'm making sure I have the full picture here, Hazel." She shook her head slowly. "Okay, what are you going to do?" "I don't know yet, but I'm going to that breakfast tomorrow." She raised an eyebrow. "Why? If you're going to shut it down, why go at all?" "Because I want to look whoever this is in the eye and explain personally that none of this was authorized by me. And then I'm going to call Dominic and fix whatever damage my father just did to that relationship." I started pulling my coat off the back of my chair. "And then I'm going to have a very long conversation with my dad about boundaries." Tessa nodded slowly. "You want me to come?" "Please." I didn't sleep well. I lay in my apartment on Rutledge Avenue with the ceiling fan turning slow circles overhead and thought about my grandfather, Coleman Dunbar. Dad always talked about him like he was some kind of patriarch from a different era, which he was. Coleman had pulled Ray out of a bad situation in his 20s by calling in favors and rearranging things without asking, and Ray had flourished. So in Ray's mind, that was the blueprint. That was love, decisive, unilateral, and certain of itself. I understood where it came from, I genuinely did. But understanding a thing and accepting it are two entirely different animals. The Palmetto Room is the kind of place that has white linen tablecloths at breakfast. It sits on the edge of the historic district and the windows look out over the water, and on a clear morning the light in there is something close to ridiculous in the best possible way. I arrived at 9:50 with Tessa beside me, wearing the charcoal blazer I'd bought for my own promotion dinner, and I had already made peace with the fact that this meeting was going to be uncomfortable. My dad was already there, standing near the hostess stand in his good sport coat, looking proud in a way that made my chest ache a little because I knew it was genuine. He loved me fiercely and completely and wrong. "You came," he said, and smiled. "I came to handle this myself," I said quietly. "Not the way you're imagining." His smile flickered but held. He patted my arm. "Just wait until you meet them." We were shown to a private room off the main dining area. A long table, 8 chairs, a view of the harbor. I sat down, folded my hands, and waited. The door opened at 10 past 10. Harlow Sinclair walked in first. I recognized the name from the brief Google search I'd done the night before. British-American, ran a firm with offices in London, Singapore, and now apparently expanding into the American Southeast. He was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with close-cropped gray at his temples and the kind of calm, unhurried presence that tends to fill a room without announcing itself. Behind him came 3 members of his team, and then Nolan Park, their lead analyst, according to LinkedIn, who held the door and caught my eye for exactly half a second before looking away. Harlow Sinclair stopped when he saw me. Not a dramatic stop, not a movie stop. Just a small, distinct pause, the kind a person makes when something doesn't match the picture they had in their head. He looked at me, then at my father, then back at me. "Ms. Dunbar?" he said. "Hazel," I said, and stood to shake his hand. "And I want to be upfront with you before we go any further, Mr. Sinclair, because I think you deserve the truth from the start." I felt my dad shift beside me. I didn't look at him. "The conversation you had with my father was not conducted with my knowledge or my authorization. I did not resign from my position. I didn't know any of this was in motion until yesterday afternoon. I kept my voice even, professional. I'm not saying that to embarrass anyone at this table. I'm saying it because I believe any professional relationship worth having has to start with honesty." Complete silence. Harlow Sinclair studied me for a long moment. His team exchanged glances. Nolan Park had gone very still. My dad made a sound that wasn't quite words yet. And then Harlow Sinclair did something I did not expect. He laughed, not a dismissive laugh. A real one, short and genuine, that broke the tension in the room like opening a window. "Ms. Dunbar," he said, pulling out a chair and sitting down, gesturing for everyone else to do the same. "Do you know how many people we've brought to a table like this who couldn't wait to tell us exactly what we wanted to hear?" He leaned forward slightly. "Sit down, please. I'd very much like to talk to you." I sat. What followed was 2.5 hours that I had absolutely not planned for. Harlow's team had done their research, on the role my dad had pitched to them, on the regional market, on everything. But they'd also, somewhere along the way, looked into me. My work, my record at Dominic's firm, the accounts I'd built from scratch. Harlow slid a folder across the table at one point, and I opened it to find a detailed breakdown of a campaign strategy I'd written 18 months ago that had gone public through an industry newsletter, and annotations in the margins in someone else's handwriting. "We found this independently," Harlow said, "before your father ever called us." I looked up. "The call from your father accelerated the timeline," he continued. "But you were already on our list, Ms. Dunbar. Had been for about 6 weeks. Nolan Park, quiet until now, spoke for the first time. We weren't going to approach for another month or 2. We wanted to wait until the Southeast office was fully structured." He had a measured, careful way of speaking. "Your father moving first was unorthodox, but here we are." I looked at my dad. Ray Dunbar was sitting very still, and on his face was an expression I had never seen there before in my entire life. It wasn't embarrassment exactly. It was something more complicated. The look of a man beginning to understand that the story he'd been telling himself about how things work had a chapter he hadn't read yet. "Ray," Harlow said, turning to him with a kind of diplomatic grace that I immediately respected, "your daughter is impressive. You're right about that, but I think she might have gotten here on her own." My dad was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded once, slowly. "Yeah," he said. "I'm starting to see that. I didn't take the job that day. I asked for 2 weeks to consider, to speak with Dominic, to think it through on my own terms." Harlow said that was more than fair. Nolan handed me a card on the way out and said quietly, "For what it's worth, the way you opened that meeting, we talked about it the whole flight over. That's not nothing." Outside on the sidewalk, in the warm Charleston air, my dad and I stood together while Tessa hung back to give us space. "I was trying to help," he said. "Not defensive, just honest." "I know you were, Dad. Your grandfather did it for me and it changed everything. I know that too." I put my hand on his arm. "But I'm not you, and this isn't then. You have to let me make my own path, even if you can see farther down the road than I can, because it's still my road." He looked out toward the water for a long moment, then he put his hand over mine. "You did good in there," he said quietly. "I know," I said. And I smiled so he knew I wasn't being cruel. "I've been doing good for a while now. Here's what I learned, and I mean really learned, bone deep, from all of it. Love without boundaries isn't love, it's control wearing love's clothing. The people who care about us most are sometimes the ones most capable of overstepping because their intentions are real and that makes them feel justified. But intention doesn't equal authority. Your life, your career, your choices, they belong to you. No family tradition, no matter how well-meaning, gets to override your right to stand in your own story as the author of it." And here's the other side of it. When someone oversteps and you handle it with honesty instead of anger, the room tends to change. People see who you actually are. Sometimes that's the most powerful resume you'll ever hand across a table.